A while back when I made this raw mail depot, I had quite a few comments from different people. One of them from a guy called Mickey Barris, and he said it invoked memories of when he was a teenager and did train spotting on the stations, and he used to look across at mail depots and other traffic going in and out of the station, and he had fond memories of train spotting with his father, sitting on empty brutes on the station. And I did say to him that that's a really good idea for sort of another scene, really, to create a train spotter scene. But it did slip my mind, and he did sort of hint about it in another update, and I'm very grateful because it did trigger my sort of memory about doing this scene. That's exactly what I've been doing. I've been creating a scene of train spotters looking across at the mail depot and trying to come up with something like what he was suggesting, which was a very good idea. So thanks very much, Mickey. This one was inspired by you. Hello and welcome back to Woodhill Park. I started off by having to create a canopy over this area, as the platform that I was going to have the train spotters on didn't have a canopy, and I was looking at various pictures, one of them being Crewe station, of people sitting train spotting, and a canopy seemed to fit this area, and so I could populate it with just discarded brutes and figures underneath, really. So I went to work building this canopy. I started to make the canopy by getting a bit of foam board that come in A3 sheets, so that governed the length of it. I decided to have the width about 80mm, and so I could have 40mm either side of the bend, and I bent the piece of foam board by putting a score down the centre, only lightly, so 2 or 3 little light scores down the centre, and then beginning to bend the board very carefully on the edge of a table, so it was an even bend, but you only need a slight bend. And once I'd done that, I filled the groove with super glue, and the super glue was left to go off, and the roof started to keep its shape. I then cut a square piece of the 3mm foam board, and this acted as a main sort of rib up the centre to hold the shape of the roof, and later will become part of the structure of the roof as well. But I've neglected to say, before I put the ribbing struts, you might say, on there, I did actually clad it with plasticard cladding, which had sort of a cladding look to it, a wooden cladding, rather than sort of galvanised roofing, as I wanted a cladding look, as it's not a tin shed. I clad both underneath and on top, obviously 2 pieces on top meeting in the centre of the V to sort of join nicely, and also keeping them so that they mated up. So if you were joining two pieces, made sure that the gaps joined nicely so you couldn't see joins. As I say, I did the underneath of the canopy as well in the same cladding. I then cut up some more square pieces of the 3mm board and used them as like ribs to hold the roof. They were, I think, 40mm as well, but I had to put them at sort of even intervals, so it meant measuring it and getting an even pattern of supports. Everything was glued in place with a high viscosity super glue, which is quite thick because it's high viscosity obviously, but gives you a bit more time to work with things. But this is excellent to glue foam board, and it does glue very quickly, so you need to watch your fingers. I then decided to use the old Hornby stanchions or uprights that used to be with the old canopies that you could buy for Hornby, and I think they still sell them. Years ago they could be plastic or they could be cast metal, and the cast metal ones were quite ornate, and I actually thought they would be, well, it would stop them going to waste, so I got these out, and I thought they would make good struts or good posts to hold the canopy up rather than making something new. So I added these to the underneath of the canopy, making sure that they lined up nice and flush, so fold the ends so there was no gaps, and buttered them up and glued these on with the super glue as well, which worked out well. I then drilled the holes in the platform using the original hole as like a starting point that had an original light for the stationing, which I removed. So that was the first hole that I drilled out. I then added the other holes in centrally to match equal distance. I sort of started to think I wanted to clad the edge of the canopy as well, so it didn't look right with just the end struts sticking out. So I went along matching the original pattern with cladding. I think it was about 10mm wide, maybe less, along the front of the canopy either side. Then glued numbers underneath of the platform. And I think I added a clock, and I'll probably add other bits and pieces as I come across them. That's basically how I made it. I did weather it on top, but in the end I decided I wanted to have a different colour, as white would show up too much dirt and it wouldn't be feasible that it would be white. So I wanted some sort of opaque colour to give it a feeling that it might be see-through but has got a load of grime over it over the years, gone a bit green and algae in colour. So I settled on a limey green and then weathered that with some sort of grotty colours, and it added contrast between the already rather grey station and this new canopy being facing towards the Royal Mail depot, being used to take on and off the mail trains that are pulling into this area. So these Hornby uprights come in handy, and I didn't even have to paint them. They're in a nice green, and I fancy leaving them like that, even though I could have painted them in Network Southeast red, but I think I'd rather leave them as a sort of something sort of turning back to the past as such. I added lights underneath as well, so there's LEDs over the other side of the wrought iron, so it lights up the platform on the main line, but not so much on this side where the train spotters are. If I carefully lift up the canopy, I can show you what I mean about the lighting. The lighting is fed via a couple of wires up this tube, which I'm sort of designating a downpipe for the guttering, because there would have been internal guttering from like the middle of the roof, so this is a downpipe for the wastewater, and the wires travel up that and then meet the top of the roof underneath, and there's a resistor, and then I've got lengths of copper strip which I've got LEDs soldered onto, and I've just painted it white to blend in, and I can very carefully just poke those wires back down again because there's a bit of slack in them, so it allows me to lift it off to a certain degree, or I could disconnect it completely, but just push the wires back down, careful not to knock the wagons over, and then line up the canopy again, which is proving to be a bit harder doing it at this angle while I'm talking to the camera, but it does sit nicely eventually, just like that. But that come out pretty well, in my opinion anyway. I'll be able to remove that should I want to. As I said, I've been weathering it. I've weathered it with just weather powders, just dirtied up the white woodwork where there would be all diesel sort of fumes that would create sort of soot up and down it, and I just brushed it around after putting some of the weathering powders on. I just got a big brush and just sort of rubbed it around, and it went into the grooves in the actual sort of wood panelling, just to give it a bit of a grotty look that it would have obtained from all the diesel traffic going up and down, shunting stuff. The canopy's quite a bit bigger than some of the or the canopies on the actual station, as they're more modern and they don't completely come out and cover the edge of the platform like the old canopy on the goods area here. So it does look a bit bigger, but as I say, bear in mind it is an old fashioned style canopy, and I'm just portraying its like remnants of the old age from the steam era really, and it's remaining from that in this area. But behind it is the more modern station, which would be sort of late 50s, 60s, as I've explained in my previous videos, and it was built in the brutalist style, as it somewhat represents Broxbourne Station. But the area in the goods yard come rail mail depot is really fictitious. There was nothing like this at Broxbourne. I think there were some sidings over here originally that don't exist today, but all this area here is purely fictitious when it comes to Broxbourne. But the actual station and the station buildings, except for the Art Deco front of the station, are based on Broxbourne and are reasonably accurate. Excuse the noise in the background. The builders are in a few doors down, so they're making a bit of a noise, but you know, other than stopping filming for probably a week, I can't really avoid it. Anyway, I'll continue with what I was about to say in this one. I put some ballast down the centre of this, trying to make it look somewhat like the station at Crewe, because I was looking at that as an example. It's not going to be totally like it, but it's something like it, because Crewe has got buildings on the left, even though there is a canopy, something like this, but not exact. But I did notice there was a load of light ballast down the middle, and that did look good. So I've ballasted down the middle and also added a bit of detail in the way of cables in the ballast, because I did notice there was some cabling just sort of left sort of loose in the ballast, so I wanted to do a similar thing. I painted some of the brutes in a sort of a rusty, sort of discarded colour, or discarded look in the colour of rust, and dotted them up and down the platform. The scene of father and son sitting on a brute doing a bit of train spotting, I started by finding the father or the guy to sit there, but I was missing a young lad, so I went hunting through people selling 3D figures, and I come up with a set of train spotters, and at the moment they haven't arrived, but I will be, you know, painting them when they arrive and dotting them around. I already had a guy with a camera, so the guy and the camera were already placed on the platform. I still need to do something about the stands they sit on, but I do like to move them around, so whether I'll be painting the stands of the people that predominantly sort of populate the station in the same sort of colour base to match the tarmac, maybe that's what I'll do. But you know, other than sticking them down, which I don't want to do, they need a stand. Obviously they won't stand up by themselves. So I'm trying to start to pull this scene together. There is a fundamental thing missing from the scene at the moment, and that is the young lad sitting next to his father. It still hasn't arrived. It's in the post, and I'm hoping it's going to turn up anytime soon, as I can't complete the scene unless there's a young lad sitting next to his father. And a few more days have passed again, and it's taking some time for the delivery of these train spotters I ordered from quite a well-known 3D printing company as well, that I have used as I did for the actual figure of myself. So I'm very surprised how slow they are. But meanwhile, I've ordered some figures from another company with a sort of lesser known name, you might say, and they've come really quick, within I think a couple of days. They all look really professionally printed and been nicely bagged up and protected in a nice box. And I'd like to give them a shout out, because they're probably a small company compared with the big boys, and the company's called Scale 3D Limited, and they're on eBay selling quite a few different figures. And I've got a few figures that have got people taking photos, with cameras and whatever, so they can be train spotters. But while I was at it, I bought a few other things. As I say, all these figures for under the price, delivered for just 5 from this more well-known company, which I won't mention. I think these are worth a try. I think they're good value for money. So that's Scale 3D Limited. I've now started to paint some of these Scale 3D figures, and they continue to impress me. Some of them will even stand up. They're so well balanced without any stand, as you can see. I can now finally finish this scene. I decided to repaint the father that will be sitting next to the boy on the brute, train spotting, and I just give him a sort of more sort of era look, I think, with a plain greys and browns rather than a bright blue t-shirt. Just thought it looked better. So what I've got to do now is add the final part to the scene. And if I can get it in place without dropping it or knocking things flying, there's the sun. Father and son sitting on the brute, train spotting, looking over to the Royal Mail depot. I've now finished painting all the train spotters. I enjoyed painting them, actually. It was a bit of a challenge, but I'm getting better and better at painting figures. Maybe not as good as some professionals, but this little chap here, whoops, out of focus. I was painting him, and his little notebook broke in half. So I managed to glue it back together, but it shows how delicate some of these 3D printed items are. Even I'm on the platform with my wife, chatting to a member of staff. Up this end of the platform, I've got another couple of figures. Guy with his camera, and probably his son taking notes, crossing off numbers. Also, further up the platform, I put the guy that I adapted with probably a VHS-C camera. But I'm not entirely convinced it is a bit big, but they were big. But it's better than having a figure that was broken and not doing nothing. So I've just got him at the end of the platform with a guy, possibly with a storyboard, telling him, you know, what shots he wants, and they're sort of semi-professional, making a documentary maybe. Well, that's my story anyway. I thought you might like a cab ride up into the sidings, just to give a driver's perspective, pulling in to the Royal Mail depot. If anyone else out there has any ideas like this, I would be pleased to hear of them. I can't sort of add every idea to the layout, but some ideas are really doable, like this one, and I think it's a great scene. Thank you for watching, and see you again next time. Bye for now.